It's loading, almost done. All right, we are live.
Okay, I'm calling to order the Monday, April 5th, 2021 Citizens Involvement Committee. And Dennis, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. I'm looking at 13 participants, starting with Berkeley Hills. Dee Dee?
Present.
Is Carla here?
Yes, here.
Great. With Kanema, I'm of course here. Linda, are you there? Not yet. Caulfield, John Keys.
Here.
Is
I'm
Robert?
also here.
Yeah, Robert, yes?
Yes.
Good. I know Amy is not present tonight. Right, Bob? Correct?
Correct. She emailed me. She won't be able to make it tonight.
Okay, McLaughlin, we have Denise.
I'm here.
Great. Anybody else from McLaughlin?
No, sadly.
Park Place, we have Steve.
I'm here.
And we have Bob.
Obviously here.
Hazel Grove, is Harry here? Or Jody? Okay. Rivercrest, we have Karen.
Present.
Tower Vista, Jeff. Not yet. Have I left anybody out with respect to the neighborhoods? Okay, I think that's what we got.
Okay, is Tony with us tonight?
I don't see him yet.
Okay.
I see John and I see Denise.
Okay, Christina, do we have any public comments tonight?
We do not have anybody who requested to speak not on a topic this evening.
Okay, we'll go right to presentations. Number one is annexation code amendments. Pete Walter.
Hi, everybody. Pete Walter here, senior planner. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see this? Proposed annexation amendments?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Okay. So tonight, short presentation about the proposed annexation code amendments. We're not talking about any specific annexations. We are talking about changes to the annexation code, which is in chapter 14.04 of the Oregon City Municipal Code. All right. And the reason behind these changes is to address concerns about citizens' right to vote on Oregon City annexations in accordance with the new Senate bill. And very importantly, to add greater clarity and specificity to the approval criteria for annexations. These are also called the factors in the code. And to address City Commission concerns about the analysis and timing of infrastructure prior to development. Here's a chart that summarizes the development process. The timelines shown on this chart are approximate, but starting with expansion of the urban growth boundary, which is a decision that is made regionally by Metro, but in concert with Metro cities. The process of UUGB expansion may take 2 to 3 years. And then cities will update their public infrastructure plans, such as the transportation plan, the sewer plan, the water plan, the master plan, to accommodate those areas. Then the actual process of annexation, which is where property owners petition the city to be brought into the city limits, can take a year. Then zone changes, which is changing the zone from county to city, usually takes about 9 months to a year. A master plan, which is a more detailed plan for the development of an area that talks about things like phasing, can take up to 9 months. And then you have what we call site-specific development plans, which is the process of dividing land if it is residential, or if it's commercial land, then doing a site plan and design review application can take another 9 months. And then eventually you'll get to submitting for a construction permit or a building permit. And that can take, depending on the complexity of the permit, 4 to 18 months. This chart is intended to kind of illustrate how, starting with UGB expansion, the analysis of infrastructure starts out, I wouldn't say vague, but it's very much big picture. You're looking at the existing situation on the ground. They're looking at what the land is currently. And with each of these stages, there's an increasing level of certainty about how much infrastructure costs are going to be and what it's going to take to serve a property that's been annexed into the city with city services. And eventually you start with a fairly good idea, but you're not super sure. And you certainly don't know the timing of the development, because a lot of that is based on market timing and the desires of the individual property owner and their private negotiations with developers. But when it comes to actually proposing a development, at the bottom here, where you see subdivision and site plan, the level of certainty is as high as it can be. And by that time, you will have analyzed infrastructure several times. These processes can and do occur simultaneously, but most of the time, you are dealing with at least 3 to 4 of these processes in a subsequent series of steps. So I'm going to go straight into the code because we didn't actually attach the red line code or the track changes code to the agenda, but I'm going to talk about some of these code changes. When you read that code, it talks about filing deadlines for annexations. Currently, the code it still has language in it about sending annexations to the voters. And we wanted to add that if and when voter approved annexation applies, that would still occur. And so we've added the if and where applicable clause to the process deadlines for this. Also, the annexation criteria or the approval criteria require what's called a positive balance of the factors. And this annexation code amendment is to explicitly define that the city commission will only approve an annexation when it finds that on balance, the following factors are satisfied. And when you read an annexation staff report, it goes into great detail about all of the things that are listed here. What this is doing is explicitly listing them. So it's clarifying the time of the impact as well as the specific services that an applicant for annexation has to analyze in their engineering analysis and in their narrative. And that includes the transportation system plan, and that the urbanization of the site is accounted for in that. And that application is consistent with the statewide transportation planning rule, or explains why the transportation planning rule is not required. For sewer, the urbanization of the site is accounted for in the sewer master plan, in the water master plan, the stormwater master plan, and then police, fire, and emergency services don't have master plans per se, but they do have coverage analysis so that the Clackamas Fire District and the Oregon City Police Department use. So we make a finding about the adequacy of those services. And then there's the Parks Master Plan and the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And that development of the area is accounted for in that plan. And finally, the school district. And now the Oregon City School District does their forecasting based on a lot of factors, including population growth, how many people are coming into the region, how many people are leaving the region. They look at household size and things like that. And so they do their own analysis, but our factor specifies that the urbanization of the site must be analyzed in either a concept plan or any school forecast approved by the school district. We added the city commission wanted a explicit requirement that any impacts from future development due to annexation demonstrate in their narrative and through their plans how they are mitigating for the impacts on public infrastructure. So this is being explicit about that, and it's talking about you've got to make reference to city standards and specifications, system development charges that you're planning to pay when there's a development, and any funding sources that you've identified or which still need to be identified. And this is where we first make a explanation about what is called a development agreement. An applicant may enter into a development agreement with the city, and that would be a document that talks in more detail about the timing of infrastructure and what costs the developer is going to incur and what, if any, costs the city has already factored into the capital budget with respect to the extent and timing of infrastructure. The commission also added a new factor that larger annexation applications over 5 acres must have a master plan. Master plan is a specific section of the city code. You may have heard also of a planned development or PUD. The words master plan and planned unit development are both in this chapter of code. Is a master plan is a planning commission decision. It is not a staff level decision. It requires a public hearing to be approved. And so this factor requires that any property that's being brought into the city over 5 acres must submit a master plan either prior to or concurrently with their subdivision or site plan. And that master plan will also identify the details of the development, such as phasing and when the impacts to city infrastructure are coming online. A new factor is being added that this is a more discretionary factor, but it is the annexation must be in the best interest of the city. And there's some objective things here, more objective things. So an annexation might be considered in the best interest of the city if it meets 2 or more of the following criteria: that it provides a needed solution for an existing problem, such as poor sanitation, a need for water service or other urban service related problems. It provides new land for development to meet projected growth. And it provides area for a new transportation connection, or a new utility connection. So that provides a little more clarity as to what might be in the best interest of the city. When you read a lot of codes about annexation, whether they're city codes or metro codes or the state statutes, they often talk about the need for annexations to be timely, orderly, and efficient. But our code did not include this language, even though it was implied. This code requirement actually includes that explicit language. And also, properties that come into the city from the county may have been inventoried for cultural and historic sites, but we always check to make sure that any inventories of those sites are available, but we want to make sure that all historically designated and potentially eligible historic structures are identified. And so this is a new factor that does that. As I mentioned, the City Commission may adopt a development agreement. And this is a process thing that makes that clear. And one of the requirements when an applicant is doing their narratives and their transportation analysis is that they look at what the worst case scenario or the most intense development scenario might be under the new city zoning. So what that means is if you're currently county future urban 10, which is a 10-acre district, and you're going to come into the city and be zoned to low density residential, which would allow you to subdivide the land into 10,000 square foot lots, let's say. The city has other zones that are considered low density, namely the R8 and the R6 zones, just for example, and explanation's sake. And so in a transportation analysis, an applicant would not only look at just the R10 zoning, but we would want them to look at the R6 zoning as well. And, you know, that additional density associated with that higher density zoning has to be analyzed. And that's called a reasonable worst case scenario when it comes to transportation analysis and infrastructure analysis. And these are based on commonly accepted measures such as number of residential units and how many vehicle trips are generated because of that, what the overall number of residents might be, how much commercial floor area ultimately is going to be developed, and that kind of thing. So we currently have a factor which requires that any property that's proposed for annexation at the time of annexation must not remove any tree canopy. And that what that says currently is we will factor in whether there has been significant site grading or tree removal greater than 50%. This elaborates on that a little more and talks about properties that are being under forest or farm tax deferral, or which are practicing farm or forest practices under the Oregon Revised Statutes, are allowed to continue those practices and wouldn't necessarily be penalized if they are currently doing those practices legally. But we wanted to be sure that an applicant is on notice that annexations that demonstrate efforts to avoid significant site grading or tree removal would be viewed more favorably than those that just cut all the timber before they apply for annexation. So that's a little more explicit. It puts an applicant on notice ahead of time that they should really think about preserving large mature tree stands and landforms on their property rather than leveling the site and getting it ready for urban development under the assumption that they'll be able to just continue development after they annex. So this is something that's more explicit. Similarly, we would look favorably on whether that annexation territory preserves natural features, but we wanted to make this a positive determination of the City Commission rather than have it sound very negative if they don't do these things. So that was one of the final suggestions from the City Commission to make changes to the code. Here's our tentative timeline for adoption. We've had 3 City Commission work sessions. We did a pre-application conference in December of last year. We have submitted a legislative application and provided notice to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. Then our next step will be providing a public notice. The first evidentiary public hearing with the Planning Commission is May 10th. And after that, we would have City Commission meetings if the Planning Commission makes a recommendation for approval of the code amendments. That's all I have. I'm happy to go back through some of these Sorry if I got into the details a little too much, but I wanted you to see the exact language as is proposed.
It looks like Karen Mori has raised her hand.
Pete, that's a wonderful amount of information. Um, way too much for my brain right now. But question, on islands and like a single lot that needs to connect to the sewer, is
Mhm.
this going to make a difference for them?
Well, the criteria will still be the same. What we do with, well, an island annexation is usually we're evaluating those situations on a case-by-case basis, depending on how close to the city they are. We have comprehensive plan policies that, kind of don't condone island annexations because there could potentially be an overlap of urban services and it can be somewhat inefficient. Annexations that are due to septic system failures are governed to a large extent by state law. So in those situations, if a property is within 300 feet of city sewer and is meeting all the other criteria for annexation, such as touching the city limit, and there's a demonstrated need to hook that up to city sewer straight away, we will call that an emergency sewer annexation and send those straight to the city commission. These code amendments will not change that situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pete, on your chart, it showed annexation and zone changes as two separate items, but don't those have to be done both at the same time?
Well, some properties, for example, like we just mentioned, properties that need city sewer don't necessarily want a zone change. They just want city sewer. And so we instruct the applicant that if they want a zone change at the same time, they have to apply for it. Developers who are looking to annex property into the city and then develop it generally always ask for annexation and zone change at the same time. But that's not always the case. And if we don't receive a zone change application at the same time as an annexation application, we would place conditions that restrict development of that property until such time as they apply for a zone change. And so they're not allowed to expand the intensity of land uses on that property. But if it gets hooked up to city services, say it's one house, for example, that needs city sewer, and they will do that. And if they sell the property or they decide that they want to actually move forward and propose a development for the city, they'll have to submit a zone change application separately. And that's been our policy for a few years now.
Okay, and then at one point there, I thought there might have been a little confusion. It sounded like a master plan needed to be completed before the annexation, but that's not correct, is it?
No, it's always a master plan is always going to be after annexation. And in some cases, annexations have been conditioned on the submittal of a master plan. In Park Place, for example, there's a requirement with that annexation that they do a master plan. It's a condition of approval.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a hand.
Yes, Dennis.
So Pete, how will this affect current development going on now? When will this go into? I mean, I see how your timeline there, but what the projects that are going on now, will that impact them and cause them some difficulty?
If they're already in the city and they have land use approval, this really should not affect them at all. The infrastructure analysis and the annexation analysis has already been done for a lot of those. If you're looking at properties that are outside the UGB that were contemplating annexation, I think what it tells people is that we're ramping up the criteria and the factors for annexation to make them much more explicit and to tell people what the city expects in advance, so that we don't run into any ambiguity when we're doing annexation. What effect that might have on potential annexations, I don't know at this point. But I can say that all of this analysis that we currently do, does address a lot of this stuff, but it wasn't necessarily spelled out in code. And that was one of the concerns. It was like annexations were just explained as very discretionary decisions, and the factors were kind of ambiguous. And you didn't have to meet all the factors. You only had to meet some of the factors, et cetera, et cetera. But I think after looking at several cities and hearing the suggestions from the city commission, I think it's a better code because of this. And I think it's going to be actually easier and clearer as applicants navigate our annexation process.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Take my hand out.
I have one question. So these changes, you don't expect to really deter people from coming into the city or doing projects, or just it's too soon to tell? We're gonna have people hesitating now.
It's too soon to tell. I don't think so. I mean, it's already things that we required. Whenever an application is submitted, we give people a template to follow. We give them examples of previous annexations, and it runs people through all of this stuff. But our template will change now. It will have our code review response templates will change, and they'll be a little longer. But I think people like that. I think applicants like clarity, and they like to be told what the requirements are ahead of time. And this is really just the same. It's doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Denise?
Try to answer a question. Basically, we have been responding to this from some concerns of the commission as a whole, and concern and items that have been brought to our attention by you, members of the community. So we were trying to find ways to, as Pete said, make it clearer. One of the ones that was particularly brought up over and over again that we all heard was the one about people clear cutting their property, particularly if there are steep slopes or some sort of water feature that you just really shouldn't be coming in there and starting work when you haven't done any analysis at all. But we were also very cognizant that there are people out there who do have things like farm or forest deferral, and they are required to submit specific plans for removal of their trees. I mean, it's not like you just go in and just take it all out. So that's just one example, but it was basically to make it clearer.
Thank you. Dee Dee?
I think I'm unmuted. I'm going to say this just because I'm one of those people who would squawk about going in and clear cutting properties before annexations and or during that time. I thank you very much for putting in, you will look favorably upon if you don't. Could you equally say you would be looked at negatively if you do? Because sometimes favorably doesn't sound as firm as negatively, but just a suggestion.
Well, there was the exact same discussion in the work sessions, and the direction from the city commission was to try to put this in a positive light. But obviously, yeah, there's a negative side to it.
I think you can say negative as well as positive, because then they'll go, well, wonder what is the negative?
Sure.
You'd say, what's the positive? Well, I don't know. Let's get this job done.
They don't want to find out.
We will find out. Thank you. I just had to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Carla?
Hi, I just wanted to ask, obviously we look at, the Portland metro area, especially Oregon City. There's a lot of wetlands in the area, overall. And then, particularly, in Barclay Hills, where spring, technically water is going down. And then you're also looking at, you look at the state level right now, I hear rumors about possibly not tracking geohazards as much anymore in the future at the state level. How does this apply to that? Like in the future, are we going to be a little bit more responsible in terms of preserving wetlands and also concerning geohazards, like areas that, so I'm curious what your insight is on that.
Great question. Oregon City has a geologic hazard overlay zone and a natural resource overlay zone, and those two overlay zones are based on inventories that have been adopted. There is always a site-specific requirement that, if we show that your property is touching one of these overlay zones or you're within one of these overlay zones, you've got to do a site-specific survey that shows where that resource or that slope or that landslide or the underlying geology actually is. That's not going to change. I haven't heard about there being any changes that would reduce the requirements for that sort of thing. And if anything, we're actually we've just adopted code amendments to the Geologic Hazard Code to improve our criteria for that even more. And these are statewide land use laws that are implemented by Metro and then at the local level through the passage of these codes. The last time we did a wetland and stream inventory, as you may know, was in 1999. The current adopted comprehensive plan is and the natural resource overlay zone is based off of that inventory. We're aware that there are properties that may have wet areas that don't show up on that overlay, but in general, like most of them do. And I think what we're talking about is wetlands over a certain size. So significant wetlands under the state definition are ones that are bigger than half an acre. Smaller wetlands that the city discovers, we might regulate, but they need to show up in our natural resource overlay district or touch it in order to be regulated by us. And, annexation properties will always have to do some level of inventory to show what is there. The county regulates these resources as well. So it's not like a wetland is discovered the moment it comes into the city. Normally it's discovered already when it's in the county and regulated under those laws. We provide notice to the Department of State Lands and the Corps of Engineers through their wetland notification websites so that they know whether a development proposal is coming in for a property that might have a wetland on it. So there's a lot of notice involved in that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I think you thoroughly covered that one.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Pete. That was very informative. It's always nice to see that the city is willing to make changes, hopefully for the better.
Thank you all. And be sure to contact me if you want to get a copy of the code and know where it's at in the process.
Have a good evening, Pete.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Now, the next presentation will be a public works update, and I've given John Lewis actually much longer time than I usually do, 45 minutes, because of the many things that have been going on recently, and especially the storm we had, but lots of other issues too. So John, carry on.
Thank you, Bob. So yeah, you asked for 4 specific items, and I've got those covered in the first 2 agenda items. I'm going to share my screen. I think Christina will let me do that. And
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah.
all right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here on such probably our best Monday of the year, weather-wise. So for hunkering down in your houses and listening to us presenters, I appreciate it. And Bob, thanks for the direction on kind of some of the things that you wanted to hear. I'm going to cover those in the first 2 bullet items. I did bring some other project updates as well. And we've been talking a fair amount about utility fees for SDCs and rates. So I've got some slides on that as well. But feel free to chime in and ask questions as I go through the slides. So one of the topics Bob wanted to talk about was the ice storm of 2021 and some of the work efforts that's kind of gone into that. And just wanted to kind of open that with the city in its effort to respond. Had a fair amount of complexity for a variety of reasons, which I'll go through. But when it was all said and done, and well into the event, we had a pretty quality resource page. I hope if you needed it, you found that useful. We tend to do this pretty regularly now, as we either build a project page or a program page or an event page, and try to inform that with lots of information, and then refer folks to that with some of our social media stuff. So Kristen Brown and a lot of our administrative staff do a really good job of making sure we get that stuff up. So happy to get any feedback that you have on that. So we started this event on February 10th, and really it wasn't as much inclement weather at that time. I mean, we were having some weather, we knew it was coming, but at that point we were I don't remember the exact circumstances, but our city hall was closed. But shortly after, I'm not sure if it was on the 10th, but we started having network problems and phone system failures, and we've actually had a fair amount of that recently. In fact, I think we're into a phone system problem even today as we speak. But right at the lead end of the ice storm, we were having a lot of problem with our network and our phone system, which kind of complicated the event before it even started. But the real snow and ice event, as you probably remember, was February 12th and 13th. We were really doing pretty well with the road and ice conditions. We were out in front of it, able to do a good job with that. And I think really even though this was a heavy event, it didn't last very long, and our roads were in pretty good shape throughout much of the event. But the snow and ice, as many of you experienced, the city experienced as well, which was the power outages, the citywide power outages. And then on top of that, more comm failures that kind of went hand in hand with some of the phone issues we were already having. We took what turned out to be an odd event in the sense that a lot of metro areas really didn't get the ice that we got in Oregon City, Salem. I think it went as far south as Salem, but it didn't go much further north, really. Happy Valley saw a little bit of it, but right about Johnson Creek Boulevard was where they got a lot more snow and a lot less ice. But we got hit pretty hard with ice, and I've got cohorts in Newburgh, and we were talking about it, and they were really feeling bad about the fact that they didn't have the icing event that we had. So I want to say around Tualatin, Wilsonville, Canby, obviously, Moala, Oregon City, Salem, they all had this extensive amount of ice accumulation, and that ice accumulation took out power lines, phone lines, and obviously lots of trees. The evergreens actually did pretty well, although I think they got a good cleaning, just as we see thinning happening in some of those trees. But man, the oaks and some of the other more kind of harder wood or brittle wood sure saw the brunt of it. So we had really on the 14th, we were still dealing with power outages, and they were on some of our critical facilities. So pretty much all of the wastewater pump stations and water lift stations were on backup power. And that works pretty well, although we started actually having some problems getting fuel to our sites, diesel fuel. Pretty much everything we have runs on diesel fuel. We typically have plenty of storage. We never ran out, but we were concerned about it, and we were working with the region to make sure we were getting plenty of diesel refueling for those facilities. Some of the facilities that serve water they don't have a backup power generator. Instead, they're served with redundant substations. The problem with that is with an area-wide outage, we had multiple substations go out, and so we were really struggling to get water from the treatment plant to our reservoirs, and that became real concerning enough that we did ask folks to curtail their water usage, and in the hopes that maybe people would limit water usage. We didn't necessarily see that happen, but we asked.
Could I interrupt you for just a minute there?
Sure.
Most of us didn't have power. How did you notify people not to use their water if there was no power?
Yeah, well, we did that by way of the news press release and whatever social media would work. But yeah, you're right, Bob. A lot of folks didn't have power, but if you had a phone, you probably and you follow social media, you would have gotten that. But yeah, that was a challenge. My recollection, and I'd have to check with Kristen, was we used the resources that we could. Obviously, we didn't go door to door or anything like that. The city commission also issued a state of emergency, which is still playing out. We are yet to get a determination on whether or not we're going to see any federal funding reimbursements for this or state funding reimbursements, but we, as well as many other communities in the county, are pursuing that. So we had, as many people had, multiple days of power outages. For the most part, power to critical facilities is PJE's first priority. And they heard pretty loud and clear that we were dealing with these power outages at key facilities for the South Fork Water Board. And so on February 15th, they finally were able to restore power to a key pump station, which takes water from the treatment plant and delivers it to our Mountain View Reservoir. And then a couple days after that, I think they actually had power to all their facilities. So that was good. That was great. We also were pretty quick to get to a point where we realized, man, we're going to have lots of debris and people are going to want to do something about that debris. So we opened up a couple of temporary debris handling sites, one at the community college, which actually didn't stay open very long because it was too small a site. And we were able to put together we had a couple different configurations. I don't know if you used the Cove site for your tree debris, but we had a lot of users using the Cove site for tree debris. So this picture here is an aerial photograph using a drone of kind of that dump site. And there was quite a bit of, this whole area here was residential debris. And this area over here was residential debris. And then we had our own city pile over here. And a lot of the tracking of that was important to us because all the residential debris that we took, we understand from the federal regulations, at least at this point in the game, that they probably won't reimburse us for any costs associated with the self-haul sites. So this is all self-haul debris right here, and this is all self-haul debris right here. And this on this end is actually our, we hired a tub grinder to come in and with an excavator and load that debris into that tub grinder and chip it into what we call hog fuel, and then B&B Leasing. I want to say they've hauled, well, I don't remember the number, about 180 40-yard bins of woody debris for us. The other thing I wanted to mention is we have had some park closures. We had several of them during the event just because of the liability associated with that. I think Singer Creek is the only park that's remained closed. I think today they opened Waterboard Park, but really what I heard from Kendall was that Singer Creek has still got a lot of stuff, limbs hanging high in trees that they're worried about, and they're hoping to get some of the lawn areas replanted. So they've decided to leave Singer Creek Park closed. So right off the bat, we knew based on federal regs, we needed to do a pretty good job of damage assessments. So we had staff that maybe mostly our GIS staff that we asked them to, hey, let's get out and let's get some photographs of a lot of the tree damage, fallen trees. Let's get pictures of that and let's start logging that. So they used GPS and cameras to pinpoint a lot of tree damage. So we've got a pretty extensive tree damage or storm damage photo log for presentation to federal federal declaration determination teams. So we think that's a good idea. We spent a lot of time with right-of-way cleanup. A lot of that was Public Works Department. They were on it pretty regularly. Whenever they weren't manning the Cove dump site, which was the Cove dump site was actually pretty manpower heavy. We had 5 folks at that site during the day, and just kind of checking to make sure folks were from the city and that they were getting in there safely and, you know, being able to dump without running into one another and so forth. So, and then just to push the debris around in a way that would still allow access for folks that needed to get in there. But our right-of-way cleanup effort was supplemented by 3 different contractors as well. And, you know, based on what I saw around the region, I think we did a real good job of that. There were some hard-hit neighborhoods, Kenema, all of our neighborhoods got hit pretty hard, but obviously those older neighborhoods with more, you know, established trees, McLaughlin, Rivercrest, they all were hit pretty hard. So lots of effort went into those neighborhoods as soon as we could get in there. And once we could get in there, we were kind of working hand in hand with PGE to try to work around dangerous power lines, stay away from, help them clear so that they could get to the power lines to do the work that they needed to do. So I wouldn't say it was the kind of coordination that happened there was definitely out in the field. So Jason Thornburg and Eric Hand, those guys were earning their keep in communicating with PGE and their crew to make sure we got either their staff or contractor staff where they needed to be. Obviously, utility outages, our water department was pretty regularly having to check reservoir levels, pump stations, same with the wastewater team. A lot of our, what we call our SCADA system, our radio communication system between those facilities and our main computer system didn't work well. And so, you know, a lot of that required rounds of folks to check on those facilities, make sure they were running properly. Clackamas County Office of Emergency Management, they actually were, after a few days of event, we started meeting regularly. All the agencies within Clackamas County were sitting in on those calls, checking for resources, better understanding needs, and trying to supply the need where they could and help call for reinforcements outside the region. PGE was sent Eric Underwood. If you remember Eric Underwood, he was regularly in attendance for those meetings just to kind of keep that liaison between the agencies and PGE. And then I put electrical permitting on here. I saw that on the webpage. I remember hearing concerns about the electrical permits were required or are required when property damage is done. So for instance, if a power line falls or a tree falls on a power line and yanks that power line off your house and affects your meter, putting that back together in a safe manner is something that the building department looks at. I think that the rumor mill took that in a weird direction, and that was if you had a power outage at your home, whether it was just a standard power outage, it didn't cause any damage, that the city was somehow charging a permit to get it back turned on. That just wasn't the case. It was really just about these where there was real property damage that as a result of a power line getting yanked from a home, that then did require some permitting. My recollection, and Christina may be able to validate, is the city commission made a determination to waive those permit fees. And so that did happen, I think, as a result of some of the concern about just some of the social media discussion about electric permits. So I already mentioned the storm damage dump sites. I think we did a good job with that. We've still got debris to clean up or to chip up, but and then we had another. We closed them for a couple of weeks just to kind of catch up, and then we opened it over a weekend, and it was pretty quiet. So we don't anticipate more dump site effort going forward, and then really just relying on the traditional yard debris dump sites for that. Okay, any questions on, I'll go back. Any questions on the ice storm or any, I guess we're working on reimbursement. We hope that there's a federal declaration that will cover that, but we've mostly been collecting data on costs and volumes and those kind of things.
Denise, you have a question?
I just have a comment. I just want to say thank you so much to all the city employees that did so much work. We were without power for 7 days, which meant no heat. And so we were very happy to see that power come back on. That was because of the work, the effort by the Public Works and PGE. So thank you.
Yeah, we had employees that were also out, so I think they found a little reprieve in getting to work when the power was on. So yeah, it was a tough call, but all hands on deck, and I heard no complaints from our group, so I'm real proud of that.
Karen?
Yeah, John. So I had an old maple tree that decided to explode, but I'm in an apartment complex. Our management company had somebody come in, get the big branches out, but I have a backyard full of twigs. And one thing that, it's not you, this is probably a commission question, but I am so frustrated that living in an apartment complex, all I can do with what should be recyclable material, it has to go in the dumpster. I'm picking it up bit by bit, but didn't have the ability to get to one of the recycling sites. So, future planning, Ms. McGriff or anybody. Apartments also need the ability to recycle yard debris. That's it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you mean they don't have yard debris? They didn't bring yard debris bins to your facility, or those yard debris bins weren't adequate?
I didn't see any yard debris bin in our complex. We have paper mixed and glass recycling and garbage. We do not have yard debris disposal in my apartments.
I just want to do a shout out to B&B Leasing, and I don't know whether they would have helped with that had they known about that, Karen, but B&B Leasing, has the franchise for solid waste disposal in Oregon City, and whatever we needed, they were there whenever we needed it. It was refreshing to call Donnie Anderson over there at B&B Leasing or Pam. Those folks were just all over it, and they've really, in accordance with their agreement to work with the city, they did have done a lot of hauling for us, and they're covering that expense under their franchise agreement. So I would be surprised if they heard that kind of a call if they wouldn't have provided some bins. But yeah, I know phones were down and those kind of issues are out there. But even today, I think if there was still work to be done, I'll make a note of it, Karen, and I can call. It may be something with the landlord, though. I mean, I don't know where they should put them. So you might want to check in with me a little bit offline. How's that?
Yeah, and this is normally we don't have yard debris recycling. It's, I think, something that the city has never negotiated with B&B. But hey, if Donnie wants to come pick up my twigs, I'd be more than happy.
John, I think last month, the question was brought up that right after the storm, many residents cleared debris from the street just to be good neighbors, get the streets cleared. And when the city crews came by, they didn't pick up that debris because it wasn't on the city right of way.
Yep.
Can you fill us in on what has happened in regard to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories of that. I think, responsible owners typically do. I saw it in my neighborhood for sure. In fact, I was so busy, I hadn't had a chance to get to my fallen street tree, and they cut that up, pieced it up, and took it away before the city staff or contract employees ever had a chance to get there. I think trying to convey the message to the masses that, the city's employing contractors and doing all it can to clear the right of way, is a positive message. And I know we implemented that, but on the same time, we didn't want to overstate that because we were hoping that the community would rally around, basically cleaning up the sidewalks, cleaning up the street, just like you normally would, right? I mean, I know there's street sweepers around, but typically I see people, taking care of their frontages. And so I don't, other than that, Bob, I think we were doing the best we can. We're going to be cleaning up debris, I think, until the end of the year. We've done a pretty good job with the rights of way, but we've still got a lot of, I guess is another piece of advice. If you don't look up into the trees, pay attention to that now, because there's a lot of hanging trees, limbs that are just waiting to get blown out of there or waiting to fall out of there. So we're trying to deal with those. If you see a dangerous one and it's over the public right of way, and you're worried that will land on a pedestrian or a vehicle, give us a call. Let us know where it's at. Take a picture of it and send it to us, or whatever, an address or something like that, so we can go back and find it. We're trying to keep a list of those, and going to have to be probably contracting with someone with a bigger bucket truck than we have, or has the ability to climb the tree. But yeah, I don't know. I heard some concerns about that, but what I saw more of was people doing the right thing, which is cleaning up their frontages.
Okay, Dee Dee?
Yes. Hey, John, you guys did a tremendous job. Everyone, we all knew everyone was out of communications electricity from 1 week to 2 weeks. But anyway, I don't know if we have anyone on our staff. I don't think so but are they trained? That's tree risk assessment qualified to just come in after storms. I know at the height of your mess, I was contacted by an arborist that said they had a couple of them that were trained in order just for storm assessment. They just come in and only assess the trees, whether they're salvageable, high risk, or must come down. You know, they can put them in categories. I don't know if you have a pool of that, but just for future, I think that you might want to save some names to say, hey, we can call in some experts right now to come in and make a quick assessment so we can point our staff to the most things that are at risk. You know, people that are trained to come in after storms. Anyway,
Okay.
Thank you for that. We do have the information you sent us, Dorothy. I think we saw a couple of those kind of emails, and we definitely had a lot of contractors offering services. So we struggle a little bit with that because of the just kind of trying to maintain that work and, maintain reasonable pricing and so forth. But you're right. Now, as crews continue to kind of work on this, what I heard today is we were talking about some of these high limbs, some concern about just being able to address those and not having, folks who, everybody's busy now. So we should go back and look at that recommendation. So I've made a note to look at that, Dorothy.
thank you.
Carla? Carla, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to call out again, thank you, Public Works, especially our alleys. Our alleys were quite a mess, especially my house between Roosevelt and Logus. It was terrible, and you guys were really quick. I was surprised how fast. I didn't even think that it would happen so fast that our alleys were cleared out. The other thing I wanted to call out is I have a lady behind me. She's lived in her home since she was 6 years old, and she's over 70 years old. And she had debris in her yard that fell in the alley. She has a significant large tree in her yard. And Jason, a neighbor, was worried about this, this lady. And Jason had offered to help her with her debris from her yard. And even though it was in her yard, he helped her remove it because he knows it was part of a heritage tree and he wanted to help her out. So I really appreciate him doing that also. So I wanted to call out many thanks.
Okay, thank you, Carla. And I think we're going to have to move on from the ice storm situation to other subjects from John.
Okay, so it's got a lot of text on it. Basically, the state, ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, has commenced a study to look at the options for developing a pedestrian bicycle bridge. And so that study is underway right now. It's basically a concept plan to identify alignment. So they're looking at a variety of alignments. They're doing some technical analysis on that. And at the end of the study, the city will have an opportunity to vote on whether or not they want to adopt the study or not. Keep in mind, this is probably a 50-year solution. It may not be 50 years if there was a desire for a bridge, but think long term when you think about this kind of project. And Commissioner McGriff has been participating on a advisory panel. I've been on an advisory panel. We've got other staff that are on the advisory panels. So we're trying to keep up with this. It was triggered by the fact that the 205 bridge does not have a pedestrian bicycle element to it, but they are proposing an expansion. So important project. I have a video here that I could show you, but in the interest of time, I think I'm going to skip it. Just know that it's you can find this information easily on ODOT's webpage, which is reflected in at the bottom of this page here. But their timeline is super fast. The reason for that is they're funding this through some funding that ends at the end of June. So I don't know that that's a good reason, but that is a reason, and we're feeling the pressure of that. I know Denise and myself and Dana Webb, we were all kind of conversing about the fact that, you know, there's several technical memorandums out about that project, and you know, it's looking at the gamut, everything from, you know, converting the existing bridge to a pedestrian bike only bridge to, you know, several new bridge alignments. And again, we've got project advisory committee, project leadership team, and a project management team, and there's city representation on all that from both cities and others around the region. So I think it does require you to put on a futurist lens, and if you can put on a futurist lens, you may see some need for better pedestrian connectivity between Oregon City and Westland. There really is no pedestrian access across the Willamette River short of the Selwood Bridge, and to the south of us, really nothing. You got the Canby Ferry, maybe. So we'll see. That, keep your ear to the ground of that. They've done a couple of updates to the city commission meeting, and at the end of the day, I think they'll do another one, and it'll probably be in that June timeframe. You asked about Malala Avenue streetscape project. Just, you know, this is a project estimate that we or funding estimate that we gave you last time I met with you folks. So nothing's changed there. We're tracking as planned with both schedule and budget. If you've driven the corridor, you'll notice that we're trying to main access along the corridor. We've got businesses that need your business, and so we're trying to accommodate those with drive aisle accesses, when yet we're also working across their frontages. So it is a bit of a challenge. We ask you to be patient with us and the contractor, and help your businesses by continuing to try to get to them as much as you can. But again, we've got 2 lanes of traffic. We don't have a center turn lane. We've got 4-way stops at Claremont and Gaffney and First Street. Lots of traffic impacts. So look out for those flaggers, look out for those construction workers, and just know that the project is proceeding as planned. PGE and Northwest Natural have completed all their relocation work. The other overhead utility providers have completed their work. So if you notice, all the utility poles are now moved off to the side, even further out off the edge of the road. And so that work is pretty much done. It looks a little cleaner now, actually, from an overhead power line perspective. So that's kind of a nice thing to see. But it's still pretty heavily inundated with traffic control and open trenches and all those kinds of things. So pay attention to the drive aisle rather than looking up into the sky in that location. We did change the speed limit along Malala Avenue, and that got reduced. So I don't know if you noticed that. And most of the work on the east side, or the Fred Meyer side of Malala Avenue, is done. And now they're working on the west side. So that's why your vehicle traffic is on the east side of the road. They're basically working back from Highway 213 towards Beaver Creek Road, and doing a lot of the underground utility work, including storm drainage and electrical conduits for street lights. And we're again working with some of the franchise utilities on just making sure their services and things like that are taken care of. But right behind all that underground work will be new sidewalks And you're starting to see signs of that at the intersections in particular. As we move further kind of to the north, we're getting close to Gaffney Lane. In fact, I printed something. I forgot to bring it home with me, but there's a new update today about some lane closures or some road closures there at Gaffney and Malal Avenue. So if you use those routes, know that there's going to be some disruption. So pay attention to those detour signage. But and they're also tearing out the entire road section on that side of the road now too, just like they did on the east side. So they'll soon hopefully be some, if we keep up with this kind of weather, I would say towards the end of the month, we're probably going to be seeing some more pavement going down from 213 towards Gaffney Lane. And we're still on track for completion in November. And then the last project Bob asked about was the Union Pacific 12th Street Bridge Rehabilitation Project. Just know that that project's underway. The road's closed. It's not a lot of impact to a lot of folks, but I'm sure it is to some. It's going to be closed through middle of June. And we are taking to the City Commission a resolution to allow them to do some night work where they need to work round the clock to get the old bridge demoed and the new bridge back in place, tracks back in place so that the trains can continue. So there'll be a 24-hour or less delay to train activity on May 9th. And I can't remember, May 9th, I want to say is a Sunday. Bob, how am I doing on time? I lost track of time.
Well, you're doing good. You got 7 more minutes to go.
Okay, I'm going to go real quick. Some other transportation projects, just wanted you to know ODOT is still present and at the table for updates with their various projects, including the I-205 widening project and I-205 tolling project. So they will be coming to the City Commission on April 21st. So pay attention to that. And I've left the website for that. Some local traffic control improvements, Holcomb Boulevard speed limit changes. Those are done and in place. The Glen Oak Road speed study and citizen input, that is out there for, so especially to the, what's the neighborhood out there? Caulfield neighborhood. There's a citizen input form on there about the speeds along Glen Oak Road. Berkeley Hills RFB hasn't been the project we'd hope it would be, but we've got it in. We're waiting on equipment failures and replacement of those equipment failures. So I apologize for that. That's been kind of frustrating for us, but it's not equipment that's on the shelf. So but I'm hoping that'll be in soon and functioning properly soon. Lynn Avenue and Holcomb Boulevard rapid flashing beacons, that's a project that's going to be out to bid in about 3 weeks, hopefully. So we'll get bids on that, and hopefully they will be affordable, and we'll be able to build 3 new rapid flashing beacons, 1 on Lynn Avenue near the police department and 2 on Holcomb Boulevard. I want to say, I can't remember the cross streets. I think Swan and maybe Front. And then the Gaffney Lane pedestrian improvement projects near the Gaffney Lane Elementary School is well underway. And there is going to be a closure of Gaffney Lane here. I didn't pull the dates on that, but pay attention to that if you use Gaffney Lane at all. You're used to seeing this map in the trail news. I won't go through these in detail, but will be in the spring edition of the trail news, this map, which has kind of all the various projects around town, including private development projects, will be available for your studying and reviewing. And each of those projects should have a project website as well. And then I just really wanted to talk to you a little bit about water and stormwater services. You know, we do all we can to provide you great drinking water. reliable drinking water. So, sorry. So, you know, it's our goal to serve the citizens by providing that great water. In order to do that, we have to plan for current and future customers. And it takes a lot of engineering and planning effort, as well as a financial commitment to fund that. And this map represents a pretty extensive capital improvement program. And in addition to the capital improvement program that's in the master plan, there's a lot of discussion about day-to-day O&M or replacement of old infrastructure as well. So that master plan's been adopted by the City Commission. And again, I'm not going to go into that in detail, but there's a fair amount of capital projects, both rehabilitation, pipe replacements, and new capacity projects to the tune of about $80 million. And 63% of that capital cost is projected within the next 5 years. So that's because it's needed. It feels like we've kicked the can enough on some of these things that, you know, everything's an emergency. And if it doesn't get funded soon, you know, we're going to spend a lot more dollars in response to do patches. And so we're hoping that that's not the case. And so just know that right now the commission has had the discussion about water rates. So just remember, rate dollars go towards maintaining and improving the system for the current water user, and system development charges are for improvements needed to support growth or paid for by development through system development charges. And the commission made I think a bold decision to move forward with water SDCs and actual stormwater SDCs as well. But I've got another slide for that. But we're talking about rates, and so what's needed to fund these improvements. You know, we need system development charges. As development happens, it will pay its fair share. Water rates, we've been limited to this 3% rate limitation. We're seeing recommendations of a 4 or 5% rate increase over a period of 3 or 4 years, and depending on whether we go with a debted, and you know, an option that allows us to borrow to pay for some of that capital, that seems a little more favorable in terms of a rate increase. It's more in that 4% range as opposed to doing it, you know, as pay as you go, which is more, you know, somewhere in that 5% range. So we're still reviewing those options. The City Commission still has decisions to be made there. I think they'd like a balanced approach to all the utilities. So we're kind of working through that. In fact, they've made that a goal to kind of balance the needs of all the utilities, including parks. So it's more to be discussed, but we anticipate a November ballot measure about water rates. Stormwater, again, it's our goal is to serve our citizens, providing quality, reliable service. But in order to do that, we need to do good master planning. And our last master plan was done, stormwater master plan was done in 1988, which is way too long. And so we've finished the stormwater master plan. It's been updated, and we've worked through the rate and SDC analysis, and we're talking to the commission about that. In fact, Wednesday night, we've got an item on the agenda with regard to the rates and SDCs. So look for that. The SDC recommendation, just so you know, water was a much bigger SDC increase than stormwater. Stormwater is about $114 per single family residence over what it was. So it's a pretty small change, an appropriate change. So there will be, to adopt stormwater rates, we've got to go through a public hearing and public notification process. So that will happen, and we're targeting July 7th as the public hearing date. So if you're curious in that, feel free to look for that. Bob, I'm trying to get this done here, but I want to go through these real quickly. The stormwater monthly rate change that we're looking at, we talked to the city commission about 3 different options. Well, actually 6 options. These 3 though were all cash funded. So we talked a little bit about borrowing and going into some debt to fund some of the capital program. And I think the consensus was that the cash funded option at more of a moderate capital program was the appropriate way to go. So we're bringing that to the commission. Actually, that's what's on the agenda for tomorrow night. Under consent agenda is that moderate capital. So these rates are a little different because there was a recent rate increase, but these dollar amounts here for the level of service 2 are what would be anticipated changes in rates after in year 21, 22, and 23. So that gives you a sense of where those dollar amount rate changes. Your stormwater rate is pretty low. So on a percentage basis, these are pretty sizable percentage changes, but on a dollar per month, they're not as bad as, for instance, water rates. And with that level of service to moderate capital program, it still brings in about 2.4 million a year that we would then put towards some master plan projects, 1.6 million, another 800,000 a year in critical maintenance needs, and some additional maintenance. So most of you may not pay close attention to what your stormwater utility is doing around you, but we see a lot of problems in especially Newell Canyon with some of the erosive soils, and some of those outfalls along there are real problematic. And then just in places like Rivercrest, Kenema, McLaughlin, Park Place, even there's just a variety of capital projects that really kind of need to be done.
Okay, John.
All right. Yes, sir.
Will that be it?
Well, yeah, this is the last slide here. So we're just showing you where the city's rate is at 1054 currently. If we look at that level of service 2 cash option, it goes to 1217, which puts us right above Beaverton, but below Gladstone, Sherwood, like Oswego, Portland, and Milwaukee. So that was more than you asked for, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'll stop. Well, I'll leave my shared screen in case I need to go back to anything.
Any questions for John? Okay,
All that rate stuff made lots of friends, I know.
I guess you did such a thorough job. There are no questions left. Thank you very much, and pass on our appreciation to all the people in Public Works. Huge amount.
I will do that. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Now our next, let's see here. Or the next subject is our minutes of March 1st, 2021. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for March 3rd, for March.
I will second it.
Okay, motion has been put forth and seconded to approve the minutes of March 1st, 2021. Dennis, would you take a vote, please?
Barkley Hills, Carla,
Aye.
Dee Dee,
Aye.
Linda from Kenema,
Aye.
myself, yes, aye. Caulfield, John,
Aye.
is Robert there? Yes? No. McLaughlin, Denise? Denise? Beasley?
Aye.
Park Place, Steve?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Hazel Grove? Harry, no. Jody? Oh, Rivercrest? Karen?
Aye.
Tower Vista, Jeff? No. Okay. think it passed.
Passed unanimously. Thank you. Our next item is the staff liaison updates. Christina.
Thank you, Bob. As John mentioned, I have a link to the ice storm resources information page that'll stay up and will provide additional information as we revise it or if there's any amendments. At the last month's meeting, behavioral specialist Val Mugia came and spoke, and I wanted to provide her contact information, and then in the press release, I just copied her background information so you can learn more about her, where she came from and kind of what her background is and how she can helping Oregon City Police for behavioral health issues when it makes more sense to call her out than have it being called out by a police officer. If you want to contact her directly, email is probably the best option for her. I also want to let you know that Hillendale and Tower Vista neighborhood associations are now active. So thank you for both Jeff Aiken, and I'm blanking out on Tower Vistas. The two neighbor associations meet together, and I believe they have a meeting this month via a digital link, which is on their website. Let's see. I don't believe they've finalized out their CIC appointment. So both Hillendale and Tower Vista, as well as South End Neighborhood Association, that's looking to form and send nominations in. We will process those through the City Commission when they get submitted. So if you've not submitted them, please do submit to Katie Riggs, our city recorder, and she can funnel that through the next available City Commission meeting. We are continuing to recruit people for inactive or recently active neighbor associations. So anytime you talk to anybody that lives kind of in the Hillendale, South End, Hazel Grove, Westling Farm area, please encourage them to be involved. You can send them to Bob, myself, or the neighbor association website. Right now, we still don't think I have anybody associated with Hazel Grove Wrestling Farm, so you can send them to either Bob or myself. See, I'm going to scroll down. The last couple pages are, as always, I keep links for how to describe for the Trail News Monthly e-newsletter. I forward those on from Kristen Brown when available, but they're a great resource for your neighborhood association members. And as always, if you're going to meet with a developer, feel free to submit a public records request for a copy of the pre-application conference. We have all those notes available, as well as their proposal that they submitted for the pre-application conference. And I'm available for any questions people may have.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Our next subject is under general business is the charter change support letter. Good, thank you, Christina. I was going to ask you to get that put up there. I've got a few little corrections or changes. I'll go through those first. The commission, Rachel Lyle Smith, should be changed to mayor. And then in Mike's letter, he wrote, he refers to us as the Civic Involvement Committee. Throughout that letter, those should all be corrected to Citizens Involvement Committee. And then, let's see here. On to the third paragraph, which starts with this public process could include the last sentence there, recommended revisions from the public process should read recommended revisions resulting from the public process. And then in the next sentence, charter provisions for possible revision should include, and Amy Woolheit suggested that should be replaced by could. And then, let's see here, the paragraph starting by method by which volunteer positions Goes on to say, on some or all city boards and commissions, it should be city boards, committees, and commissions. And that's all that I had. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to put in there or change?
Karen has raised her hand.
Yeah, Bob, I have a question as to why we think it's important for the entire commission to approve the appointments. I've been on multiple committees. I haven't had any particular issues being appointed. Every one of our committees and commissions hold interviews. They're available. The mayors have watched the videos or been present. And from what I've seen, most of the committees and commissions have been appointed as per the recommendations of the existing committee and commission members. I think we're bogging things way down, asking that the entire commission approve everybody for specific committees or commissions. Done.
Unfortunately, Karen, this was a result of the actions of our previous mayor, who made appointments to committees or whatever against the wishes of the committee members themselves. And I know personally in at least 3 different occasions, and this would prevent that from happening, to have one person going against the wishes of sometimes as many as 10 or 12 people on a committee or whatever.
Then I would suggest that we come up with phrasing that suggests that the mayor approve the recommendations of the committees, not that it go to the entire commission. I think you're really, really bogging down a process if you look at the number of people each year that are new to different committees and commissions.
Well, I guess that would depend on the commissioners and the mayor, how they approach this, because in most cases, the interviews themselves are conducted by the different commissions, not by the city commissioners. And this would simply make it a provision that the recommendations of those committees be more likely followed. It's an unfortunate situation that one mayor would cause this kind of thing.
The interviews are recorded and available, and each committee or commission that I've ever served on it has a list of who they preferred to fill the vacant positions.
That's correct. And as I said, the former mayor violated that particular way of doing business.
All right, and I think you're bogging the whole process down on a single individual, but
okay,
that's my opinion.
John has his hand up.
John?
Yeah, I understand where Karen's coming from. These conversations have gone for a long time in other meetings also. But I believe last meeting, the CIC recommended to do this thing. We've already had, I believe, I'm not incorrect, that we've already voted that we were going to do this. And I understand there's, competitions both ways.
You're correct, John. At the last meeting, the CIC did approve to send this letter to the commission, and tonight is just a matter of cleaning up details of the letter itself.
I think it was a raise by excuse me for just sounding off without my hand up, but the thing that Mike presented last time around was that this was a thought to have a chance to write a letter to allow the city commission to review the process that has been put in place and maybe make amends if it's warranted. So I mean, beyond our control, we are, as I understand Mike Mitchell, is that he wants it to be a subject for review. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct. That's exactly what it's for.
Oh, good.
Bob, I wonder if there's one option would be in this paragraph about the method is potentially just taking out the second part of the sentence after the comma. So method by which volunteer positions on some or all city boards and commissions are filled, the planning commission and historic review board of a particular concern. If it's a process comment, if that's a way to create more unity from the CIC for this letter about process.
Yes.
I would like to mention that I think it was when Rachel Lyles Smith was just appointed, filling in for a mayor. She wasn't really the real mayor yet. She made some appointments for some of these positions. And that was just by her alone by doing this. The other commissioners did not have any input into this. One of the positions that was filled, the people had written letters asking for a person not to be appointed to that board because of past comments and person's actions. They didn't feel that he was fitting. But that one person went ahead with everyone else's comments and placed the person on the board. Those are on public videos as well that people can watch.
Aaron, did you have something else? Your hand is up. Aaron, your hand is up, or was that left over from before?
Sorry, forgot to hit unmute.
Okay.
Clarification to Linda's comment. Rachel at the time was the president of the commission and we had no mayor.
Yeah.
So that's why that appointment occurred.
Any other comments?
I'm all for, this is Dorothy Dalser. I'm all for our commissioners reviewing the appointments. I think the more eyes on our city volunteers, the better. What's the harm? Enough said.
Okay, I think we've already approved in the letter, the last meeting. So I guess with the corrections that I stated, are there any other corrections that I missed? I think I might have. Okay, Christina, did you get those corrections that
I did. So I just want to verify, I have the corrections that you mentioned. It didn't sound like there was a motion to add the correction I recommended, so I will not add that. I will put this on the CIC letterhead, and I can forward it on to Katie Riggs to pass on to the City Commission.
under my signature?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, sounds good to me. Okay, let's see here. Now we come to roundtable. Exciting part. I'm going to start at the top of my list, Berkeley Hills. Carla?
Yes, we had a meeting not too long ago, and we didn't have a lot of attendance. At that point, I think it was the same day the mayor was actually being, decided by vote, and it was the final day. So we had a few neighbors, and then we also had our 2040, survey done, and we had visitors from Hillendale and Tower Vista observing our meeting, and that went well, and we were successful at the 2040 survey, and we're having, I'm trying to think of anything else. Nothing else really came up, And we're having our steering here next week. So that's about it for us. Dee Dee, am I missing anything?
No, nothing from our meeting. It was a nice,
Okay.
short and sweet.
Thank you.
Okay, Kanema, Linda.
Kanema is trying again to have a meeting in April. We've been blasted out with ice storms and fires, but we keep on trying to have a meeting. So this will be a Zoom meeting, and wishing us luck to get things going. Anything else, Dennis?
Oh, just the update on our ongoing issues related to Kanema. I just want to, enlighten everybody about the ongoing issue related to the cottage industry. The cottage buildings. If you happen to catch the HRB meeting the last session, what was encouraged by the city of trying to mitigate and try to bring resolve to this and allow the development and the finish a project that's been going on for close to 5 years. I could be wrong, it might be more. And with all the inspections and all the reviews and all the different various committees, we have, as of the meeting last that I spoke about, the HRB, I found the volunteers from the HRB performance was very weak. I don't know how much review, how much input, the history of this project, the adjustments and the inspections, whatever. The odd thing about it, to let everybody in on it, was the fact that the crazy way of giving allowances or forgivenesses to some of the violations, whatever they were, the recommendations, but picking one to think that they are doing something purposeful and positive for the community, I think they failed miserably. It's just a bad sort of mark against the way the city has worked to try to bring resolve to this. And I think their suggestions were punitive, maybe, we're out of line, and would cause innumerable expense, waste, and stall the project even longer. And it's just unfortunate that in our community we have people that speak loud and they get listened to, and they're a very small minority. And sometimes it impacts the community in such a way that is very disheartening, both to people wishing to come into the neighborhood, people who want to come in and do remodels or build, that the dissension and the rancor between certain individuals are listened to more than the greater majority of the whole, who want to see this project finished and want to see it resolved. And maybe I'm just on a box, but I wanted you to know that it's unfortunate. Thank you.
And I concur with Dennis on those comments.
Thank you. Caulfield, John. Hello, John Keys.
Yeah, coming on. Had to find the unmute button. We had a meeting on March 23rd, which sounded really good. We had a very poor turnout. This time, the first one's pretty good. This one's pretty bad. Pete Walter came and talked about the 2040 survey, idea what was happening, what was going on there. Then we had Carlos Calava, his name is, talking about the school projects. And Wes did most of the talking. I can't think of his last name right now. It was the school boards, but he was talking about what was going on in junior high schools. The 5 classrooms at the high schools are going to revamp and update because it's time to do some remodeling and fixing up some of the things at high school. One thing brought up to us, I think, by William Gifford, he's talking about maybe all the CIC, all the neighborhood groups have their own Gmail address. So as you change leadership, you don't always have to change email addresses. I don't know how pertinent that would be. I think I have a big thanks for John Lewis also. I believe the boat dock down there at John Storm Park it belongs to Oregon City, and they fixed the potholes. That was awesome. I could float my boat in the potholes last year. So it's really nice that the park's got little bit of work done down there, and they opened the bathrooms again. I hope that can last for a while also. And that's about it.
Okay, McLaughlin, Denise.
Hello. We had a meeting March 18th, general meeting, and we had a couple speakers come from Father's Heart Ministries to talk about the request for conditional use. And it sounds like they want to make that into a permanent use for shelters, overnight shelters in the winter time. That led to quite a discussion that carried on at our steering committee meeting. Not sure what the resolution was for that yet. We did a goal setting session at our steering committee meeting and came up with 4 goals. The one that's important to you is we're going to do some cleanup at Barclay Park on June 5th from 9 to 11. We're going to do a cleanup at Waterboard Park on July 17th from 9 to 11. And a cleanup of 7th Street on May 1st from 9 to 12. Okay. And did you get all that, Christina?
Oh, it is recorded. I didn't write it down, but
Okay.
if you want to email it to me, I can add it to the website.
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Denise. Park Place, Steve.
Unmute there, unmute. So it says, okay. Park Place had a general meeting on March 15th. A lot of the discussion that took place was regarding Hiram, which is a right of way through the middle of the park. So a very hot button item that we are trying to get resolved. And I think the latest today was that in the Park Place master plan, it was noted that that would be rerouted so that it would not bisect the park. Of course, the master plan was dated 15 years ago. So anyway, next meeting, steering committee meeting on April 19th. And there will be a presentation from ICON regarding the Sears property development. So that's what I have.
Okay, Rivercrest, Karen.
Okay, I'm going to do this with 3 hats. First hat, Vice Chair, Rivercrest Neighborhood Association. Nothing really up. We took a beating. Boy, did we take a beating during the silver thaw. Park looking better, neighbors starting to look better, but we really, boy, did we lose trees. And the Oregon City Women's Club has a little library up in Rivercrest Park that took a limb right through the roof. And a mystery, marvelous person actually fixed the roof of it. We don't know who it was, but thank you to whoever that was. Second comment from Karen and only Karen, to our neighbors to the west in historic Kenema. Dennis and Linda, I agree with you 100%. And also question for people planning park cleanups. Are you checking? Okay, this is from the member of the Parks and Recreation Committee or Advisory Committee. are you checking with staff before you plan your cleanups? Because I know that some of our park areas are still questionable due to our beautiful silver thaw.
Of course we are.
Just double checking, Denise. Thank you, dear.
Good question, Karen. Yes, that will be done.
Denise and Denise.
Yes.
Okay, just making clear, because I do know that especially Water Board took a really serious hit. So that's it.
Thank you, Karen. Next is Commissioner Riff. Denise, are you on mute?
Yes, I was.
I thought I saw your lips moving.
Yep, not too much to report. I want to thank John for inviting me to the his neighborhood association meeting, and I also want to thank the Park Place people for inviting me to their meeting. And just as a little postscript about Park Place Park, it was a piece of property acquired from the as I read in the report. So you know how sometimes things come back to haunt you. So I just, I got a copy of a report dated, well, the file was PZ 9601, and guess who the staff person was? So I went back and reviewed this, and what was suggested is that the 6.5 acre site that was formerly owned by the Park Place Water District was acquired and identified as a future park. So the recommendation was that that Hiram be relocated, but obviously since 1996, that can was kicked down the road. So now I'm on the other side of the road, and hopefully we can make that happen. The only thing that I actually want to report is that we have a city commission meeting tomorrow, and we have a special meeting at 6 where the Honorable Lorraine McNeese will administer the oath of office to Rachel Lyle Smith, and we will also certify the election results. And then we have, hopefully, and I say hopefully because my fingers are crossed, you can't see them, but we will have a relatively easy meeting. Now, as soon as I've said that, I'm knocking on wood, that's not going to happen. There will be an Arbor Day proclamation. Bob LaSalle will be giving a report, and I'll recommend, Bob, turn your volume up so you can be heard. Natural Resources Committee will be giving a report. We have a first reading of some ordinances dealing with land divisions and public services, an emergency annexation over on Forest Ridge Road because their sewer is failing, conservation easement on Lazy Creek Lane, a vacation on 1625 Washington Street, and the sale of the property at 306 South Center Street. And then the exciting part of the meeting will be discussion and distribution of the financial reports for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. So I want you all to be sure to tune in for that. That'll be the highlight of the meeting. I want to also make sure you know that tomorrow at 6:30, there's a virtual public meeting sponsored by ODOT. That's what I was holding up when John was on. This is the little postcard I received in the mail. And I put the link in the chat. And it's at 6:30, there'll be a welcome, 6:40 project presentation, 7 p.m. questions and answered. And then there's an online survey. But if any of you, like Mike Mitchell and a few other people, please send me your comments about the Oregon City Westland Bicycle Pedestrian Concept Plan. If you have any thoughts about that you'd like me to bring forward to the group. I sit on the Project Advisory Committee. John Lewis and Dana Webb are on the Technical Advisory Committee. And then I sit on the project leadership team with Christine Lewis from Metro, Mary Baumgartner from West City Council of West Lynn, and Ryan Weinsheimer, who is the ODOT Region 1 Director. So that's the only thing, that's all that's coming up. So thank you so much. And I look forward to attending some of the other neighborhood meetings. So be sure to send me an invite and I will come if I can. It looks like I was going to go to Hillendale tomorrow, but I have this Oregon City Westland bicycle pedestrian meeting, so I may tune into their meeting late. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Denise. And that will, does anybody have anything else that we have missed tonight? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.